Here we go, session 2. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm here with Malena DeMartini. She's an expert in separation anxiety, and Dr. Isla Fishburn, who's going to bring us all of her wisdom and help us out with the behavioral health panel as well. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for having us.
We are really excited that you're here. So this panel is going to work a little bit differently than the nutrition and stress that we just finished. This panel is going to start out with a presentation from Malena, and then we're going to finish with a presentation from Isla, and then we're going to roll into Q&A for both of them. So without further ado, Malena, I'm going to give you the ability to share, and we're looking forward to both your presentations. Thank you, ladies.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, give me a moment while I, let's see, says, there we go. All right, it's going to take a minute. It'll share this, but I want to turn it into slideshow so you don't have to see all the gobbledygook. There we go.
Wow, you even used the banner.
Well, of course I use the banner.
Thank
My
you.
gosh. So, first of all, thank you everyone who is attending today, and most special thanks to all of you that have been involved in getting this Stronger Together series put together. I think this is so powerful, and it's so important that we are there for each other in this industry, in this time, which is so challenging for many people. So I just appreciate being here. That's me in the middle with my dog. Her name is Teeny DeMartini, and she is a recovered separation anxiety dog. I got her about 10 years into my separation anxiety career. So I already knew what I was doing, but it was very interesting. She taught me so much more having the presence of a separation anxiety dog in my home. And so one of the main things she taught me was a whole new level of empathy and compassion about the process that we have to go through when we're helping our sweet loved ones go through this challenging issue. So I don't want to take a ton of time with this presentation. We've got Dr. Fishburn coming up, and we have some Q&A, but I just want to go through a few slides. The first thing, really very simple. What is it, right? We've got these concerns about separation anxiety, and there's been a huge uptick in people's concerns because of this pandemic and the fact that we've been spending a ton of time with our dogs as opposed to leaving them as we typically do for work and other types of activities. But separation anxiety is truly a panic issue, okay? Where, and I have to tell you, even in human beings, panic issues are not always rational, right? How many people do we know that are afraid of flying on an airplane when we have discovered through the traffic associations that it's actually much more likely that you'll be harmed in a car incident than on a plane. But people are definitely not, some people are definitely afraid of going on an airplane and flying to a new location. And that's not rational. And unfortunately, we can't explain that to someone. If someone's on a plane and we say, you know what, according to the traffic association and the statistics that we have, this is really much more safe for you. That doesn't quell their panic in the moment. And separation anxiety is really not all that different. It is a bit of an irrational fear if from our perspective, right? We think, well, my gosh, I come home every single time that I leave. Why is my dog so panicked and afraid of this? Why is there such a phobic response? And the answer is there are so many reasons that contribute to having this condition. And regardless of what precipitated the issue, we have to be really gentle, kind, and compassionate with our animals to help them through what can be a very serious welfare concern. So I'm just going to go through a couple of slides. I want you to know that from my background, having worked with separation anxiety for 20 years now, I'm very science-based and I am mired in the research. And in the past 4 decades, separation anxiety has been the most commonly discussed disorder in published studies, so research studies, right? And the thing that's so surprising, though, the etiology, the treatment, and the prevention are truly elusive. And we have not figured out any real understanding about why and how and what to do and how to potentially help dogs from not acquiring these sorts of concerns, right? And so I just wanted you to know that it is a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing. We don't know exactly what precipitates this, not in a pinpoint way. Some really exciting, I'll geek out with you guys for just a moment, some really exciting research has come out in the last little bit where they actually found sort of the genetic marker. They call that a haplotype, and I'm not a geneticist, so I certainly can't speak to it, but they found this genetic marker that would signify that an animal might have a predisposition towards separation anxiety. And I think that is really exciting for one particular reason, but for many others. One of those reasons is that many people are told that they have caused their dog's separation anxiety. Now, if we have a genetic issue, what is it about that genetic issue that you have caused, right? And I want any and all of you, whether you're dog professionals, whether you're, personal dog guardians, to know that separation anxiety is not your fault. Absolve yourself of any guilt that surrounds that. Let that go because it happens more commonly than you might believe. And it is not a result of most of the things that people think. Here are several non-separation anxiety influences. And these have all been studied in the research. And if you want the literature, the research literature from which these are cited from, I'm happy to provide those. But how many times have people been told, if you let your dog sleep on your bed, if you feed your dog table scraps, if your dog came from a rough history or, was rehomed a number of times in a shelter, if you take your dog with you everywhere, if you haven't done sort of obedience type training, if you've not been your dog's leader of the pack, someone even celebrated, which I find hilarious, celebrating a dog's birthday, and whether that is a correlation with separation anxiety. I would love to meet that researcher because I assume that she or he has a tremendously fabulous sense of humor. But no, celebrating a dog's birthday does not have any influence. And talking to your dog as if he were a person, lack of structure or discipline, or even improper crate training. And one of the things that you may notice from this list is can you imagine, let's just take one of them, talking to your dog as if he were a person. Can you imagine if that was actually in some way causational for separation anxiety? We would have thousands and thousands and thousands more dogs with separation anxiety. We all talk to our dogs, or at least I hope we do, right? So I just wanted to let you know this so that you realize that separation anxiety is not being influenced by any of these items. And the research has been pretty clear and been able to be replicated numerous times. I want you to understand that a strong and healthy bond with your dog leads to more comfort and less distress. So happy, secure, and contented with you is a benefit. Oftentimes we hear information that states that we should try and break the bond with our dog in order to help with separation anxiety. And I highly encourage you to really think critically about that suggestion. This is no different in children. We know that these strong and healthy bonds lead to that comfort and less distress, and actually lead to very well balanced adults. And so it is so important that you create a bond with your dog that that he knows or she knows is secure and safe and comfortable. All right, we're going to talk just a little bit because we want to get on to the questions and to Dr. Fishburn. I just want to let you know that one of the things that right now, particularly as we have all been, in sort of a lockdown, sheltering in place, dogs may or may not be coming acclimated to our leaving. So if we've been home for this entire time, there sure could be sort of a, if you want to call it, a weakening of that alone time muscle. Okay. And so I think it's very worthwhile to actually view your dog when alone, just to check on what he or she is looking like from a behavioral standpoint. You can use stuff like Zoom, like we're using today, or there's standalone cameras. You can use Skype, you can use FaceTime. There's all sorts of available programs out there for you to use at this point. But watch your dog and make sure that you identify the body language so that you can discern whether your dog is stressed or just sort of like, gee, this is a bummer. I wish I would have been able to go with mom or dad. We want to know that, and if they are stressed, don't worry, there's much that we can do about it. Separation anxiety is surprisingly one of the most fixable disorders, and on the flip side, most people don't actually believe that or feel that way because the treatment has been rather elusive, and people are concerned that it takes a long time, and it can, but it is really something that responds beautifully to training. So this is actually a great time to start working on alone time while we're all hunkered down. And depending on where you are, there's, certainly different areas that are starting to return to work and to other activities. But most of us are still in some sort of, partial, at least, sheltering in place mode. And it's a great time, and you'll hopefully find this enlightening. One of the ways that we can genuinely impact separation anxiety in a positive way is to sort of hit the reset button and not leave the dog alone for a little while, and then start to practice very gradual absences. So I like to say that, if there were ever some sort of silver lining to this pandemic, is that all of these dogs have had the opportunity to stay home with their guardians and kind of hit that reset button. So really, all I would like you to do if you have a dog that has never had separation anxiety is to start practicing brief absences. They don't have to be your 4 or 8 hour workday. You can, take a walk without your dog and watch them on camera and see how they're doing. Just sort of make sure you're exercising that alone time muscle every now and again. If you feel your dog needs a little longer time alone, grab a book and go sit in your, driveway in your car, or drive around the block and sit in your car and, read a couple of chapters for 20 minutes or so. And that will help significantly. If your dog did have separation anxiety or a propensity towards it prior to the pandemic, you probably will have to implement a little bit more work, but the gradual process is still the same. So, as I said, practice brief absences from your dog, short walk, bringing the trash out, and we really suggest to watch the dogs remotely on a mobile device, okay? And if that sounds scary to you, I promise, with Zoom and all of the other apps and programs out there, there are very, very many easy ways in order to watch your dog from your mobile or from your tablet, okay? So here it is. Prepare for return to work. Set up a camera or computer using a platform like Zoom. Watch the dog occasionally, but by the way, don't become addicted. It can become very addicting to watch your dog and see what they're up to all the time. I have literally had clients over the last 20 years that once their dog was recovered from their separation anxiety, I had to create a behavior plan for them to get them to be not so addicted to their camera because they always wanted to watch. So be careful with that. Practice brief absences to keep the alone time muscle in shape. And this one, I'd like to just kind of remind everybody, maintain payment and relationships with dog walkers or other caretakers. If you're going to need someone to, be a sitter for your dog, they've been hit hard. And as we start to open things back up, they're going to get very busy. And I would love if you were at the top of their list because you had maintained your payment and relationship with them. And then enrichment activities are always a plus for any dog. So even if you can't be leaving your dog on a regular basis, and you can't be exercising your dog in the same exact way that you used to due to social distancing, enrichment activities will really, really be helpful. All right. My main message for you is that we can truly make a difference with these dogs, and that we can return to work and have the dogs be safe and healthy and happy and not be distressed. And so I'm very happy to talk about the questions in that regard, but please stay safe, enjoy your time with your dog. And I'm certainly available if there's questions after this webinar.
Thank you so much. That was very, very helpful. It makes us feel like we can do it.
You can.
And that's what we need to hear right now, truly. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Isla, would you like to go ahead? Isla, do you have slides, or are you gonna speak right from there?
My face, I'm afraid. Yeah.
That's just what we want. Yeah, thank you.
Me, my room, and my dog that might decide to come in. She's sleeping right next to me at the moment.
Good.
Oh, thank you, Malena, for your talk. Really, really powerful messages and support. So thank you. It was really beautiful to listen to and hear. And yeah, just like Malena said, I just want to first and foremost just take this opportunity to just welcome everybody and thank beautiful Steph and Julie and everyone else who's been involved to just put their most powerful and magical and potent and just medicinal day together, right? So really, really just very grateful to be here and bring my teachings to everybody that needs to hear it right now. So today I'm just going to talk about really getting us to understand the concept of the physical identity, the energy identity that we all are, and also about coherence, and really looking at this from a stress perspective, so stress in humans, stress in ourselves, and how this can be absorbed by our dear I'm going to say dogs, and I just have dogs, but really I should say pets, shouldn't I? Because I'm sure some of you haven't just got dogs, you've got cats or hamsters or guinea pigs or even house rabbits or house pigs or because knows what else we have in the house, even our goldfish, right? And so I'm very much, the way that I work is very much about vibrational health and energy medicine, and how getting people to understand really when we strip away our physical being, so beneath the skin, beneath the hair, beneath our physical identity, there is an energy identity, and we need to understand both in order to have this coherence and really in order to live our life from a place of just absolute certainty, absolute knowing, absolute trust. And what I've been aware of for a long, long time really is that as a zoologist and someone that really, I look at everything as an ecosystem. So me as Isla, I'm an ecosystem that's kind of communicating and functioning within myself and the outside world, and my dog's an ecosystem, and the universe is an ecosystem. And so then we kind of all connect like a jigsaw piece into just mini ecosystems that together create a collective. And so from that perspective, we are genetically ancient beings. We are genetically ancient humans that at this moment in time, and today we live in a modern day world, and our modern day lifestyle, our modern day society for so many of us places in situations where we are kept, our nervous system is basically kept in either a constant state or a prolonged state of stress activation, of the sympathetic activation, the side of the nervous system that basically tells the body, quite rightly so, when we are under threat, when we feel like, we're going to be chased, we're going to be murdered, we're in pain, then that nervous system needs to be activated to get the body to respond naturally as it should when there is a threat. But the problem that happens is that we are in a modern day world where we are subject to so many stresses that, as I say, the nervous system isn't getting enough rest before we feel that another stress is taking place within our system. And what I want to say is, like, as humans, like, we are the only species that can actively choose whether we're placing ourselves into stress or out of stress, and actively choose, constantly, consciously choose how we de de-stress ourselves, and equally how that's going to then de-stress our pets. And so when one part of the nervous system is activated, so when we're under stress, the sympathetic nervous system is activated, which means the parasympathetic nervous system, that part of the nervous system that's just like, I'm really chilled, I'm rest, like my dog right now, like if you could see her, like she's just fast asleep, we're resting, we're relaxed, like we feel totally safe, we feel totally cradled, really fully nurtured. And what is happening from that perspective is that when one is activated, the other one can't be activated. But we also only have two defense mechanisms within our survival strategy as an ecosystem, as a being, as an energy identity. So we have the nervous system and we have the immune system. But again, when one is activated, the other one kind of is depleted. And unfortunately, it's the nervous system that will always take precedence. So the way to understand that and explain that is like, imagine we've been on safari in Africa, like had that most amazing holiday, been on safari, seen some amazing wildlife, and unfortunately it's coming towards the end of our holiday, and we've got dysentery now, so we're kind of unwell, we're like in our tent, not very well, like our immune system's kicking in, it's, you know, fighting off this like bacteria and like really kind of keeping us safe and well and kind of returning back to health. And then from outside the tent we hear the deepest, darkest rumbles of a lion. Right, instantly our nervous system is going to go, right, shut off immune system, let's just not care about sickness and diarrhea right now, just run and get the hell out of here. So when the nervous system is under stress, it will always override the immune system. So that's why we need to consider ourselves and think of ourselves as this integrated system that is not separate from anything else. And that's not just internally, that's not just what within, it's also what happens without. So there's a really beautiful statement of as within, so without. What is happening from a conscious perspective and an energy perspective of what is happening in our internal environment is also reflective of what we see on our external environment, but is also what is happening within, we can't tease apart. So yes, when our nervous system is distressed, that is affecting our immune system, it's affecting our digestive system, it's affecting our energy system and our energy state. And there's a really beautiful, so Einstein had this amazing saying that I tell people all the time, which he says the intuitive mind. So the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. And unfortunately, we live in a society where we honor the servant and we've forgotten about the gift. And this is really important when it comes to stress, because this is really something that we can do consciously to decide our stress levels and to actually have an awareness of our stress levels as well. So all animals, including ourselves, respond and live and feel from the intuitive mind. Now I'm pointing to my heart because that is our intuitive mind. Our heartbeat isn't just an organ that's keeping us alive, it is a sensory organ, it's an organ of perception that is sending out electromagnetic frequencies, it's sending out information, it's sending out literally energy and chemistry and electricity to just let the body know, this is how I feel. This is how I need to feel based on anything and everything that I'm surrounded by within my body and also my external environment. So all animals, including our dogs, are living and operating and responding from the intuitive mind. Now, what happens as humans is that we can get so caught up in our rational mind. The rational mind is very linear. It's very much about what's right and what's wrong. And it's really, we've been as a species from hundreds of years, we've been conditioned to live and operate from the rational mind, rather than seeing it as this resource that we can use, this kind of servant that we can rely upon and call upon. We kind of live from our mind. And what that arises and what that creates in so many of us is that our mind creates thoughts. Our thoughts influence our nervous system. Our thoughts influence our breath. Our thoughts influence our heart rate and also our brain activity. So what is happening when we are having a thought is what is following from that thought is energy. So even from a thought, we are changing the energetic state within our system. We are changing our ecosystem, how our ecosystem feels, how our ecosystem is communicating. We are changing the energetics, the electricity, the chemistry that is communicating to the body through our beautiful cells that have made us as the physical person that we are, the physical being that we are. So each cell is literally alive and is communicating to every other part of our body at a cellular level through the mitochondria and the energy that is produced, that woof, just sends information throughout us. And when we have these thoughts, basically, when we think thoughts, when we have these thoughts, they are words. And words hold a frequency, words hold an energy, they hold an intention, and so do our thoughts. And this is exactly what we see in terms of, if we think about fears. There's been loads of studies that have basically shown, if someone sat at home thinking about, God, I really hate going to the dentist, this dentist really terrifies me, like I really hate flying, like I really hate going to nightclubs, or even the thought of going out, like we start to just think about these things, and energetically this changes the energy state of our being. It changes the vitality, it changes the essence and the frequency, and therefore places our nervous system into one of not safe, but now distress and stress and uncertainty. And again, our thoughts do affect our nervous system, they do influence our nervous system. And what is really interesting, that it goes much further than that. So this is something that we can control once we start to recognize, like, is that a felt sense? Is that something that I'm feeling? Is that something that I'm thinking about? And it can become really, like, it can take time, but once we practice it and practice it and practice it, so it's like going to the gym. If we just like, I'm just going to do it every now and again, we're not going to see any difference. But once we really dedicate like our life and our time to be in this place of coherence, so it was explained to me, like when our ecosystem is in a state of incoherence, it's like signals are being fired off all over the place. But when we come into coherence, everything it's almost like arrows pointing all in the same direction. And so we come into alignment, we come in coherence, and everything around us feels so much more supportive and so much more harmonious because we are in harmony. And as we become in coherence ourselves, this literally just like grows out of us, or just seeps out of us into everything that we are surrounded by, close by, but also just out. And this is what I want everyone to understand, is that everything is alive, everything is giving off an energy. It's just like, it's beautiful now that scientists can talk about it and can like study it. So it's a concept of biophoton research, it's a concept of DNA consciousness, of DNA itself holds a consciousness. And so this is something that I read a while ago that just blew my mind, where scientists, I don't even know why they did this as a study, but they did, and thankfully they did, because it's really interesting. So in the 1960s, the US Army did some research into DNA consciousness, just how would DNA change, and the effects of that. So they basically took swabs of saliva from different people, put that in a lab, sent the people off like miles away, and started to show the people pictures and movies that would invoke different emotions, different emotional states, happiness, sadness, anger, frustration, and whenever these different emotional states were felt in the human, guess what? The DNA that was in the lab also evoked the same response. Different frequencies, different vibrations were starting to be emitted. And so literally DNA itself is alive. It's not the fact that it's in us. It spreads out. So as we become more coherent ourselves, not only are we living a better life, not only do we feel better, we feel happier, we actually are healthier because that's supporting our immune system, but working on ourselves is actually working on our dogs, because as we start to come into coherence, everything around us starts to vibrate better as well. And the best way to understand that is a concept called entrainment. So anybody that works in a clock shop, or if you know anybody that works in a clock shop, what they'll say to you is the clock that has the strongest pendulum, the clock that has the biggest swing, will influence all the other clocks' pendulums to swing in unison. And if we take that concept of as we have an energy identity as well as a physical identity, as we are energy beings, depending on our current state of health, whether that's emotional health, physical health, spiritual health, mental health, we want kind of all these aspects to be coherent. So for each individual, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's our dogs, depending on the individual, we have this energy signature that is specific to us, that when we are at rest, when we are at peace, when we are in coherence, our vibration, our resonance is a particular vibration, a particular frequency. And what can happen through entrainment is that when we are operating a plate of, like, distress or anger or frustration, then it's changing the effects in our chemistry, it's changing the effects in our vibration, and that can affect our dog. And equally, what can go further with this example with the DNA and the saliva of the test that the US Army did is, imagine now, like, you know, we love our dogs, we stroke our dogs, like just before we go off to work, for those of us that are maybe able to go back to work. So we stroke our dogs, so we leave an imprint on our dogs. We go off to work, we might get stuck in a traffic jam, we might be at work with someone like that annoys us and we get really frustrated with them, we get really angry with them, and that changes our emotional state that our dogs can sense. So I'm not necessarily saying, oh, that's going to harm our dog, because our dogs have ways of dealing with that. Like, you know, we might see a dog that does a load of shake off, we might see a dog that licks, or loads of different examples, really. But it's having that understanding of, like, I always say, I did a post on this the other day, like, I really wish, like, we all love our dogs so much, and if only we loved ourselves as much as we love our dogs, like, if only we realized that actually by loving ourselves and really working on ourselves to be coherent is actually medicine for our dogs, and is medicine for all of our pets, and is medicine for our partners, and is medicine for our community, and medicine out for the universe. And so this is why, for me, it's really important to honor and understand that, yes, we are a physical being, but because we are first and foremost an energy being, that it's really important that we look at different practices that we can do. And there's so many. I mean, there is so many that I don't have time to talk about all of them. And there is so many that some really align with me and resonate with me, and some are great, but I'm like, I can't, like, not in this lifetime. Like, not in this lifetime I'm going to learn everything. I wish I could. I wish I was like the robot from Short Circuit when he reads a book and he's like, and I'll read it again later. Like, I'd love to have that brain, but I just don't. So we're looking at these tools and techniques that just align with us, that resonate with us, that we can use. But what is really important is that, like, we're here to live our life as a ceremony, and this is something that, again, because we live in the rational mind about, or something is right or wrong, or it's very linear, and, you know, this is what I believe, so therefore everybody else's beliefs are wrong because I don't believe that. Like, I'll tell you now, most of our beliefs are just not, like, they have a truth, but they're not the truth. And once we start to just relax into that and have this, you know, operation of living from the intuitive mind, where we're like, wow, anything is possible. Like, wow, like, my neighbor just, yeah, interacts with her dog differently to what I do. I want to learn about that. Or my friend is reading up on something to do with dogs that I've never heard of before, and that's so interesting. I want to learn about that. You know, rather than having this closed off, like, well, I don't believe that, so I'm not going to explore it. That's what life is about. It's about exploring, and again, that brings in coherence as well. But what is really important is that it's no different when we look at these techniques, when we look at particularly our thought and how our thoughts really influence our nervous system, really affect our ecosystem, and therefore all ecosystems, like our dogs, other pets, our friends, our family, people in society, like everything, then what we realize is that it's no difference between, like, you know, we wash our face, we clean our teeth as a form of cleansing the physical being that we are, but we also have to cleanse the energy being that we are as well, because our energy states throughout the day can become depleted through all manner of different things, because someone looked at us funny when we're out shopping, because they'll be like, oh, what's she wearing? You know, that judgment is passed. And even though it's intentional, even though we don't recognize it, that actually can deplete our energy. It can be something where, you know, even if we exercise, sometimes we have to then put in place these protocols that go, right, now I'm going to come back into this place of coherence, depending on how much exercise we do. So again, it is a little bit like exercise, where if we, you know, just do it every now and again, and we're not going to see a difference, and not going to feel effect. But once we do a daily practice, and this is like a commitment, because our life is a ceremony. When we're in ceremony, it is a commitment. And also honoring the fact of, as humans, like, the world is an amazing place. It really, really is. And there are so many lessons and teachings that we can have in our day-to-day life, where, you know, when life is on the up, we're like, yeah, let's have a party. And when life is on the down, yeah, let's have a party, because it's all about learning and improving from where we are today, of how we can be better tomorrow. So there is a whole load of things that we can do, and, you know, it's pointless kind of discussing them all. So I wanted to just give just some little nuggets, I suppose, just little gold pieces that you can take away and start, like, implementing today, of how we can start to bring coherence into our being, and how that can start to then affect our dogs. And for me, although, like, you know, I do a morning ceremony, I do an evening ceremony, I'm doing a ceremony tonight. I really hope you can join. I'm so excited about the ceremony. So the ceremony tonight, we're going to go deeper into other practices. But a really simple one that we can do is just simply focusing on the breath, we can consciously dictate and what's the word? We can have control of our breath, and because our thoughts influence our nervous system, our thoughts actually influence our breath, even if we don't notice, and that can affect, as I say, our heart rate, our brain activity. Then just simply by focusing on breath is a really beautiful way where we can bring coherence into our body, and we can bring therefore coherence into our dog and their vibration, and as I say, our partners, our friends, and it just, in terms of DNA consciousness, it just goes out, which is, it's just so beautiful once we understand this concept. And with the breath as well, so what will naturally happen when we are driven by our mind and these thoughts of, I'm not good enough, or that person's better than me, or I want to be able to what they can do but I'll never be able to, or like their dog's better than my dog, or my dog does this and their dog shouldn't, or I've read this book about what my dog should be doing and my dog's not doing any of those things. That's because there's no such thing as a textbook dog. Unless we wrote a book for every dog in existence, there is no such thing as a textbook dog. So let's just, for me, I'm just like, let's just take the pressure off. We're being conditioned through this rational mind of like pressure on ourselves, and therefore we put that onto all beings that we're surrounded by. So let's just take that pressure off. But naturally what happens is that when we breathe in, the heart rate naturally increases just a little bit. So kind of as we breathe in, that activates the sympathetic nervous system a little bit more, and when we breathe out, then that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So actually by controlling that, by really influencing that consciously, we can start to create a shift in our coherence. And it's a really simple concept. You don't have to like buy anything. You can be anywhere. You can be in your garden, you can be in your house, you can be in the kitchen, you can be in the car, you can be anywhere. But if we do like a rhythmic breathing, what that does is it resets the system. And I really encourage you to do this, even if it's just for 3 minutes a day, and then 6 minutes a day, and then 10 minutes a day, and just really notice a difference. And then with that, start to notice a difference on the days that maybe you forget to do it, or you haven't done it. Or again, you can do it, 4 times a day, 10 times a day, when you're like, actually, I can really feel I'm going into that thought process of that's bringing up my anxiety. This is just a thought. It's not even true, but it's now starting to influence my stress. Then you can reset. You can always go back to like, what would my dog do? My dog is an intuitive being. My dog would tell me, go back to your intuitive mind. And that's what we can do with the breath. And the beauty of rhythmic breathing is that we can also kind of reset the nervous system, and we can reset the nervous system so that we place our being back more into the parasympathetic state. And that's through just doing a cycle of, we can do 4 breaths in and 8 breaths out, or 3 breaths in and 6 breaths out, or 2 breaths in and 4 breaths out. So I'm going to give you another couple of tools as well, but I just want us to practice while we're together. Like, as I say, Tunkasila's right next to me, my dog. She's fast asleep anyway right now. But if we just literally, you can close your eyes if you want, you don't have to. And I always just like to place at least one hand. You can place both hands on your heart if you want. Just allows you to feel your chest rise and fall. And our dogs are really good at doing this reset button anyway. Like, how many times during the day that we hear our dog just simply do the yeah, our dogs are doing that all the time. It's a beautiful calming strategy. It's a beautiful strategy of reset, but also calm. Our dogs get that from when they were really tiny pups, when they were lying with mom, when they were just born and they couldn't walk and they couldn't see, they couldn't smell, and they couldn't hear. All they had for their sensory system was a relying on that felt sense, relying on the motion of, as they're lying with mother and mother's resting and all the other pups are resting, they can feel the natural rise and fall of mom's chest as she's resting, as she's breathing. And in that sense, yes, they can feel a heartbeat, but also again, they can feel the resonance, they can feel the vibration of mother, and they feel safe. But then as they become a little bit older and they start to explore their environment, they stretch my knee out a bit, they now can't feel that natural rise and fall of mom's chest. So all that mom does is to give an indication, to give a little feedback mechanism of like, all right kids, like I still feel fine, you can still feel safe, continue exploring. All she does is, while she's in that rest position, and she goes, it's a reset, yeah, life is good, all is well. And so we can even use that as a way to replicate for ourselves, but also to replicate with our dogs. And I do this an awful lot for my dogs as well. But for us as humans to just kind of come back into that intuitive mind and to just for this moment, just now I was on this talk, just for this moment, is we place our hands on our heart. If you want to, you can close your eyes if you want to. And all we do is we just breathe in for a count of 4. And we'll breathe out for a count of 8. And breathe in for a count of 4. And out for a count of 8. I don't know if you heard that, but Tungasila just did that lovely deep breath. And in for a count of 4. And out for a count of 8. In for a count of 4. Out for a count of 8. And just sit like the stillness and the silence of our being, just being still, and in for a count of 4. And out for a count of 8. Just a few more times, in for a count of 4. Out for a count of 8. In for a count of 4. Out for a count of 8. In for a count of 4. Out for a count of 8. Another couple of times, in for a count of 4. Out for a count of 8. Final one, in for a count of 4. And out for a count of 8. And even just doing that for, 30 seconds on a day, and it really is, as I say, like when we look at like energy work, when we look at vibrational health, when we look at restoring and resetting and bringing our body into coherence, there are so many things that we can do. And every day I do a series of different things, but just doing that breath work for 30 seconds a day, and then upping it to a minute, to 2 minutes, to 3 minutes, to 10 minutes, to, sometimes I can do it for half an hour or even longer. It brings our body into stillness. It brings our body into peace. It brings our body into a realignment and resetting into the parasympathetic nervous system, where our body's like, hey, like all is well, which is how we should be living our lives, when we remember and we learn and we practice what it means to live in the intuitive mind rather than the rational mind. So that's something that we can do for ourselves, and just understanding, even as we're doing that, we can literally kind of think, okay, even if I don't know, for some of us, we still might feel stupid doing it, or like it's not going to work. But again, if we're saying we're not going to work, then we're in our rational mind of having those thoughts and those doubts of what is reality. But even as we're doing it, like, okay, as I'm doing this breathing, you can have like a little mantra, or just like a little thought of like, as I realign, as I become more coherent, that supports my dog's coherence. As I become more coherent, that makes my dog more coherent. As I realign, that allows my dog to realign. Because although we have a physical identity, we are physical beings. For me, fundamentally, what is important of what we focus on is our energy health, our vibrational health, our energetic state, and how this literally impacts everything. If we are not operating from a place that is vibrationally in harmony and vibrational balance, then that just kind of is felt by everything that, as I say, is not just close to us but around us as well. So that's something we can do for us. I see the time. Okay, we don't have time. What I want to focus on for our dogs is some really simple, again, I'm going to mention very, very briefly kind of about some plant medicines that I love. But again, something that you don't even have to go out to do and buy and research. So this was taught to me by an amazing lady called Madison King. And it's something that is really, really ancient. It's a really ancient symbol and a really ancient technique. You'll find it on a lot of like like cave paintings or indigenous kind of scriptures where they've kind of sculpted in stone, and it's the infinity sign. Yeah, it's just simply the infinity sign. And the beauty of it is it's a really ancient symbol of one of harmony. It's aligning the left hemisphere with the right hemisphere. It is literally the shape of DNA. And so when we use it as a hand signal, when we use it on our dog or on ourselves, it actually it works very well where there's physical distress, where there may be pain, for example, but it can also work really well for just emotionally just kind of grounding ourselves, grounding the animal, just kind of when our state is like energetically erratic, it can just be really good at stabilizing and realigning, because we're like, okay, we are just working on the both hemispheres. And the beauty of it is as well is that, you know, some dogs, if we're a bit stressed or our dogs are stressed, they don't like to be touched, but we can do this because DNA, like we have the influence of working the dog's energy field or in our own energy field. Like we don't have to be tactile in the physical area. We can come out. I mean, well, to be fair, we can do this even if we're in, you know, on a talk somewhere thousands of miles away from home and our dog was at home, because DNA has a consciousness, DNA is alive, so we don't have to be even next to the animal to do it. But what I find really effective, and I've done this many, many times for my clients, is simply just trace the, I kind of can't do it on tongue concealer. Hang on, I use my little doorstop. So we have a little dog, and so you can do figure of eight all the way down. So you can do from the head down to the body. And the thing is, it's not about, oh, I'm going to be doing it with my dog while I'm watching this horror movie, and oh, I got a bit of a jump there. Like you still need to be present. The whole point is being present with your dog. Or you don't want to be doing it and like you're not a conductor. You haven't got an orchestra. It's really methodical. And like, wow, I'm doing this just to stabilize my dog's energy system. I'm doing it to stabilize and calm my dog's being, my dog's cellular health, my dog's vibrational health. You can also do it from you to the dog, which can work really nice. Or you can do it in a particular localized area. So again, like, practice that. I would love to hear like what you find and how, and yeah, just any feedback from that. But I find like even sometimes, like if I'm maybe working and Tunka again maybe starts to just get a bit like, is it feeding time, or are we going out time, or I don't know if she's got distressed by something, I'll just simply even without touching it, I'll just do this from me to her, and she slumps back down. So hopefully when we did the breath work, you kind of, I don't know if you would have heard it, I don't know if the microphone would have picked it up, but as I started to do that breath work myself, she simply just went. And this is just a beautiful silent communication and exchange of information without even having to speak to our dogs, without even having to say anything. It's like I'm coming into coherence, and so is my dog as well. And one of the things that I love to work with, I mean, there's so many things, like we can go into like drumming, which we'll do in the ceremony tonight, and dancing to like shake things off and shake our energy off is really great. But one of the things that I love is working with essential oils and floral waters to support not just only our vibrational health, but also our dogs as well. So I have like on my altar, which is in front of me for the ceremony tonight, is I have some hydrosol, so I have some floral waters. And this is the thing, everything has a physical identity, but also an energy identity. So the way that I understand when I'm working with plants, or if I'm working with stones, or I'm working with anything really, it's yes, I see it as a physical thing. I can look at it in my hand, I can feel it, I can see the water inside. But actually what I'm understanding on a deeper level is the energy identity, the vibration that is in the power of this water, or the power of the essential oil. Now, the way that I tend to work with the floral waters and essential oils is more individual. So it's more kind of understanding the energy signature of the water and the oil, and the energy signature of the dog, because and not like, for example, like turmeric is a really big thing right now, but turmeric is certainly for some dogs just going to interfere with their energy system and not be as effective as maybe like another spice or another herb could be. But just as like three that I want to give you is some things that you can try to see if, to support your dog in grounding themselves and kind of being really good at kind of de-stressing as well, are 2 oils and 1 floral water. So 2 that I found really powerful, really grounding, and very kind of, in that sense, like really strong energies is vetiver, essential oil, and also nutmeg. I just find them really, for dogs in particular, like really grounding. Although with the caveat of I prefer to work with essential oils and waters in terms of the energy signature of the individual water and the oil and the energy signature of the dog. And a floral water that you can use, a hydrosol that you can use, which is really beautiful. It just opens up the animal's heart. It really opens up the animal to just kind of feel trust and comforting, calming, is linden blossom. And this can be something that, again, could be helpful, like when we leave the house, is you don't have to, you can spray it in your hand and offer it to the dog, but you can literally just spray it in the room. You can spray it in the room like periodically throughout the day. You can spray it in the room before you leave. So they're just 3 tools that I would use as well. So for some tangible nuggets, I would really like encourage you and invite you to work on that rhythmic breathing, so that we're putting ourselves as a reset and coming into coherence, back into the parasympathetic nervous system, really having awareness of like where your thoughts take you, and the fact that our thoughts influence our ecosystem. If they're influenced, they literally can affect our nervous system, so therefore they affect our immune system, our digestive system, and for our dogs, we can do just this really simple like figure of 8, or even just breath work in front of our dogs. Our dogs love it because they're like, wow, okay, I see you, like now you're relaxed, now you're reset, now you're coherent, and that can be really supportive for our dogs. And I just love, I love working with nature. I love working with the plant people and the plant spirits. So they're the 3 tools that I wanted to give you on our talk today. And then that brings us nicely to time. So I understand that we have questions that have been sent in. So I don't know, we can both kind of, me and Malena can jump on and tag team together to go on to the questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Fishburn. That was amazing.
You are
really,
more than welcome, my friend.
Really great presentations today from both of you, helping us not only get back to our new normal safely and comfortably, but also with the tools on how to keep our pets and ourselves calm when we're experiencing stress. Super awesome. Thank you very much. And yeah, we've got a few questions to go through, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great.
Alrighty. So we've got these 3 questions that we've kind of put into every panel, because they can relate to every panel topic in the same way. So in regards to behavioral health, some of the things we see happening with COVID and the pandemic is our animals are feeling confined, trapped, and maybe they're taking on the energy of the human in the household who's feeling things like stress and anxiety, financially, things like that. How can we help? Malena, do you want to start, or I can ask Dr. Fishburn?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think Dr. Fishburn will probably address this more thoroughly than I will, but one of the things that I really feel strongly about is that, our dogs, as Dr. Fishburn was just talking about, they really do, feel what we are experiencing in probably more profound ways than we could ever imagine. But having said that, I also really do feel that using enrichment and play and outlets for, and it helps us too, right? If you suddenly say, I'm going to stop freaking out about my finances right now, and I'm going to play tug with my dog, or, throw the ball, or squeak a couple squeaky toys and run around the yard together. That is a release of a lot of that stress for us, but also for our dogs. And I think that's so important. I don't think this is, particularly directed towards separation anxiety, which is, really my personal niche. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Fishburn.
Thank you. Yeah, so, going back to the rational, like this rational mind, it's a great example of just how we are so conditioned to operate from the place of fear, right? Because again, it's all of a sudden, we're in lockdown, so my dogs are going to get really distressed because they can't be exercised as much as they can, or like we're in lockdown, so I'm going to go back to work at some point, and then my dog's going to get separation anxiety. Like, it really makes me laugh where, like we've already discussed, like it was, the conditioning has been, well, my dog's never had separation anxiety before, but of course it's going to get separation anxiety now because I'm in the house all the time. So that's just a fear. Like, again, it's a rational thought of, it's just fear. So it's not even true. Now, of course, it's important as a human that can have that that deeper understanding of, okay, my dog might, so what protocols can I put in? But it isn't necessarily the truth. It could be a truth, but not the truth in that sense. But also, you know, it always makes me laugh because particularly this time of it, well, it depends where in the world you listen from, I suppose, but certainly right now, like we're in the summertime, like it's summer solstice today. Like our dogs are social group animals, and we so often think like, oh, if my dog was left on its own, you know, out in the woodland, it'd be running around all day. Like our dogs need 14 to 17 hours sleep a day. So again, it really makes me laugh in the most respectful way, in that cheeky way of like, it's just again that conditioned mind, it's that linear mind, it's that rational mind of like, oh, my dog can't be exercised, oh my goodness, how is he going to feel? And what can happen for some dogs is, because everything is about safety, so unfortunately, and this is why I don't walk my dogs every day anyway, is because some dogs, as part of their routine, if they learn I have to be walked every day in order to, you know, to put my scent down and to do a perimeter check and to do a territorial boundary walk, and in order for safe, to, you know, to feel safe. So if a day comes where the dog isn't walked, then for some dogs it can be like, well, what's going to come through? I haven't put my scent down today. What's going to come through that territorial boundary? Well, I'm a bit stressed. So we can see that in some dogs, which is why I always implement a protocol of sometimes my dogs don't get walked, so that they know today you're not going to get walked, and do you know what? We're good. We're safe. We're still okay. But in that sense, you know, yes, our dogs need 40 to 70 hours of sleep a day. So when I, for example, when I worked with captive wolves, I loved observing just the amount of time that they rested. And yes, arguably, so they're in captivity, so they don't need to go out and find their food. And that's why for canines, really, they're foraging and roaming long distances in search of food, in search of a hunt. Our dogs don't need to do that. So it's almost, again, like, how can I take the pressure off the human so that we're not in our rational mind, we're not in that place of like, you know, alarm bells, like fear, I'm a bad human now because I can't walk my dog and my dog's going to get so distressed. And like, that's just not true. Let's just take a step back and go, okay, actually our dogs need 14 to 17 hours sleep a day. Actually, yes, physical exercise is really important, but so is mental exercise, so is mental stimulation, and so is our own, you know, again, going back to coherence. So one of the things that I do, this is why every day I do a self-check-in, because I know it affects my dogs. And one of the beautiful things, like people often ask me, like, you know, when I work with the wolves, like I got so many lessons from them. But one of the lessons that I got, which it was a really big lesson about looking at my life, was every morning, even though the wolves were in captivity, even though they knew each other, you know, they lived together, every morning when, you know, it was a new day, the very first thing that everybody did was come together and greet and play and interact, like, wow, it's like, I haven't seen you before, I haven't seen you like for ages, oh my goodness. And that taught me so much of like, wow, treat every day with excitement, treat every day like it's going to be the best day ever. And like, that's the same thing with our dogs. And also, again, when we look at coherences, and this happened to me just a couple of days ago with Tunkasila, of when I do a self-check-in, so the importance of a self-check-in, because I was getting ready to take Tunkasila out, and I was like, I already was aware, like, I feel irritated, and so I just sat with it. So it's fine, you know, it's fine to feel anger, it's fine to feel frustration, it's fine to feel sadness. These are all emotions that humans need to experience. But again, rather than allowing our rational mind to take it to a different level, we can sit with it. So I was just like, okay, hi, irritability, I see you. So why am I irritable today? Because I'm not normally. And how's that going to affect my dog? And then lo and behold, I take her for a dog walk. So this is why I said before, what is within also projects to without. Took her out on her walk. Lo and behold, like, Tunkasila is a reactive dog, so I take her out early in the morning in a place where we don't see anybody. I saw 3 joggers with their dogs off lead, which brought more irritability in me. Now, normally, I would, you know, that would just create more irritation, but I just laughed. I was like, okay, thank you for the teaching. Again, a self-check-in, like, why am I feeling irritated? And actually what it was is because I was so excited but also so nervous for today that just, it was Thursday, and so this kind of energy was building up inside of me and it was just coming out as like, I just need to get this energy out. So it was irritation. So that's why for me, one of the things that we can do again is that self-check-in, which is why the rhythmic breathing, that is part of my protocol. I do a daily ceremony that is included in it. But yeah, just also again, think again our thoughts. If we're sat at home going, I need to walk my dog normally goes out for 2 hours a day and he hasn't, I bet he's gonna be really anxious, my poo, I feel so bad for my dog. Then again, what we're doing, guys, is that we're changing from that nervous system state of rest and relaxation and peace to stress. That affects our breathing, that affects our vibrational health, that then affects our coherence, that then affects our dog's vibration as well. Yeah.
So we really push our emotions, right? We're connected, like you said.
Yeah.
This one's for you, Malena. Darlene was asking your thoughts on having an only dog and having more than one. Kind of going back to this pack animal and anxiety. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's so interesting to me that, and this is from the research, in addition to what I have experienced, that if we're talking separation anxiety anyway, that many and the larger percentage of dogs that have true separation anxiety or isolation distress are actually not typically helped by the presence of a second dog. Or a cat, or or a guinea pig, or a pig, or whatever, and it surprises me, because you would think that, oh, they just don't want to be alone, so we'll get them a little friend and they'll be fine together. Separation anxiety and isolation distress are very human specific, which is incredible to me, because we have con-specific and like, wow, right? Why would they be so attached to our presence and absence, and that the second dog in the house is nothing to them? Now, having said that, and one of the things that I always sort of recommend, if someone wants to get a second dog, I mean, that's great. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. But I highly discourage people from getting a second dog for the purpose of fixing the first one. Um, on occasion, just clicks and it works out beautifully. But most of the time, you end up having twice the work, and sometimes two dogs is even more than twice the work, in my opinion, or three or four, or four. It actually more than doubles the work. And what you don't want to do is end up with one dog that has separation anxiety and the other dog that's frustrated because you're trying to do these sorts of training exercises all the time with the one dog, and the other dog doesn't have the same level of attention. So I'm all for multiple dog households. But I just really discourage people from considering that second dog as the panacea for their first. We want to get a second dog because we're ready to open up our home to another beautiful living being, right? Not to fix our issue. So I mean, I think that's really important to remember. And the other little caveat to that, when you have someone just mentioned, or you end up with two dogs who truly don't like each other. I see that comment. Yeah, that's not a good thing either. One is annoying the other, for sure. But the other thing I want to mention, if you already have two dogs or more, if you have a multiple dog household and one of the dogs or more, then you can always work at the level of the sort of lowest common denominator. In other words, if one dog is anxious and the other dog is not, or the other dog is only mildly anxious, you will work with the dog, you will work at the level with the dog that has the majority of the anxiety. And sometimes those roles change too. You'll work with one, you'll work with them together, but you'll work on one, and in time you'll see that now the other dog has some interesting issues popping up. But that lowest common denominator is important. And I know that there was a comment there about you've got two dogs and no separation anxiety, but you did when the one was on his own and they're calmer. But yeah, it doesn't always work that way, Sandra. And I worry that people are going to run out and get it. So I'm not saying that it can't be helpful for some dogs. For some dogs, it will make zero difference, and that's unfortunately the majority of dogs. And I don't have a reason behind that. The research kind of dictates a few reasons, but we're not really sure yet because the etiology is still so elusive, right? But I do that you have to give consideration to why you're getting that second dog. So I don't disagree that it can work, Sandra, and thank you for mentioning that. Let's see, was the second one related to me there? This is one of the, oh, okay, good.
Isla, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just again from my perspective, because separation anxiety as a subject is so vast and fascinating, and like we've already discussed, there's so many, it's not just like one component, or my dog has separation anxiety, so do this and then it's gonna work. It really is individual specific. But how I see it as well, because our dogs are social group animals, so the way that I look at it as well is looking at the dog as a functional character. Because what would happen naturally is within a certain social group situation, depending on the functional character of the dog, and therefore the functional characters that are in the group together, there are going to be some individuals that kind of provide as an anchor or support for the dog. So it's right in what's kind of being said, in that in some situations we can bring a second dog in to support the dog that's got separation anxiety, and it works. But in a lot of cases it's not going to work, because you're bringing a second dog in whose functional character is there and is important in terms of performing a different functional purpose for that group situation, but isn't there as an anchor to go, right, now I am here, the separation anxiety goes. And I've worked with, so for example, I worked with a dog, like, was the most so the dog was a really, really nervous dog, and it just so happens that her functional character was an alerter, so a naturally, even within in the litter, a naturally shy, nervous, suspicious dog. Even with the humans, like, she wouldn't even go out for a walk. She was just really, really scared. The lady had tried all manner of different things. She'd brought in different dogs. She'd had other professionals out, and none of the information that was given to her from other professionals was not wrong. It was all completely right. It just wasn't working for that dog. And so the only thing that I had was, like, we could look at functional character. So what we did, we searched around her neighborhood, and luckily we're able to find a male dog that was classed as a defender. They're confident. They're very much like, they will still listen to direction from the human, but they're very confident. They're like, I am here literally as a defender, as a social group animal. And you know what? As long as that dog was around, she didn't care. She would walk for 10 miles. She would sleep in that. She just didn't care. But try and get her out the house with another dog, or out the house on her own, or settle in the house on her own, she just didn't want to know. So that's just kind of my take from my perspective. Again, it's like, how long is a piece of string? It's not always going to work. But certainly, when we look at our dogs as not just like, and this is why I want us to step out this linear way of thinking of, like, okay, this is what the literature says, so therefore it happens, because that is like a mechanistic model, and we're not machines, our dogs aren't machines. So it's really looking at them as an ecosystem, and more, not even a holistic approach, almost like an ecology approach of, as we're bringing that second dog in, well, that second dog also has an energy signature, that a second dog also has, a coherence. Is it coherent, or is it also got issues of being misaligned? And then that is then just putting two individuals together that are like this, so it's creating like a crescendo rather than harmony.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that answer. And if I can just pop in and say one other quick thing, I love that you mentioned that, because Dr. Fishburn, because I had a very recent client, and this has happened over the years many different times, but I had a very recent client who they're in Amsterdam, and the dog had a good buddy, that they played together and what have you. And when that second dog would come over, they were perfectly fine when left alone, perfectly fine. And so, understandably, the client thought, well, all he needs is a doggy buddy. No, not so.
No.
And they were smart. They decided to foster first, and saw that it wasn't working out with the first foster, and so they fostered a second, wasn't working out, and then they kept bringing that other dog back. But when that the friend dog was there, things were fine. And so, I mean, it is just, we don't, and it's, maybe you understand this far better than I do, but I don't know if it's particularly simple to identify which dog is going to be that dog that makes it okay for the individual in front of us, right? So I'm certainly not saying that a second dog would not be helpful for some animals, but which dog is that second dog, and can we figure that out? And so, and again, I just don't want people to get a second dog in hopes of fixing their first, and then have double the work and the finances and so forth. So that was a really great point. I appreciate you saying that.
Great. Yeah, and definitely you're right. Double the incoherence, and that's just adding fuel to the fire. We kind of want to dampen it down. And actually, one last thing. So this is just something that I've played with. I can't say like I can't. Yeah, just if it's helpful for people, just something to try. What I've always done for my dogs, regardless of their functional character, is my concept is okay. My dog's a social group animal, so I'm leaving them. So at what point, like in the dog's like ancient biology, would I leave them but they still be at the den site, as it were? It'd be maybe when I'm hunting, because not sometimes as a social group animal the entire group doesn't go off to hunt. So what I used to do is I used to get mice from like a little reptile shop, so that would feed like the snakes or whatever, and I would literally just take one out the freezer, leave it outside, or take it to work with me, and the second I came in I'd be like, there you go, have this, and obviously it was dead, but have this mouse. And I've done it every time with my dogs. And just the concept, like, look, when I leave, there's a reason why I leave the house, and the reason I leave the house is I go off hunting, and when I come back, this is what I've hunted for you, if that makes sense. So I'm not saying it's going to work, because this is the whole thing. This is why I would never say do this and it's always going to work, because what works for one human isn't going to work for another. What works for one dog isn't going to work for the other. But it's just something that I've always done, but with, again, remembering that there is, like, again, because of DNA consciousness, if we're now like leaving for work and I hope my dog's okay, I'm a bit stressed about, then our dogs are feeling like they can be absorbing and actually getting distressed because of our own stress. Because what our dogs need to know, what any animal needs to know, is from an energy perspective, from a cellular perspective, does my being feel safe, or does my being not feel safe? So even if there is another group member that doesn't feel safe, then energetically and vibrationally that can affect the dog to be like, normally when you're at home you're really zen, but actually when you leave the house and I'm still surrounded by like you and your scent and your vibration, like you're really, like, that's telling me that like I should be really distressed when I'm on my own. So that's why, again, we should look at the human part to it as well. Definitely.
Very, very well said, both of you. Thank you. In the comments here, we're all like, holy smokes, you two are just blowing our minds here on this behavioral panel. Vinda and a few other attendees asked, and both of you already touched on this a little bit, but if we could go a little bit more in depth, that'd be great. Can my animal absorb my illness or my stress?
I'm going to jump in, Malena, if you don't like. Only to say, when I read this question, I was like, yeah, I love this question. Because yes, absolutely. So why I love this question is because there's very, very little research on it. There's a few people talking about it, and there's a few books that kind of, in some of the chapters, they mention it. But absolutely, because again, we are all just a vibration, and so this isn't just about the human's illness can kind of be absorbed by the dog. It's sometimes the dog's illness can be absorbed by the human, and the wife's illness can be absorbed by the husband or the children, and it isn't just like a human dog thing, it's just a vibrational thing. So absolutely, I absolutely, from my perspective, believe it to be true. Now, of course, what we don't want to do is then jump again into that rational mind of like fear, panic, like, oh, I'm such a bad guardian because I'm now projecting my illness onto my dog. Not at all. If we are unwell, then there are ways that, again, we can vibrationally set the intention of keeping it to ourselves and not transferring it onto our dogs. Emotionally, it can be harder because often when we're in that emotional state of distress, we're not even aware of it. But physically, again, this is why I'd go back down to rhythmic breathing. And we're really, words, this is what I love about words. When people say to us like, oh, how do you spell this word? Our words are spelling. So our word is basically casting a spell. It's casting magic. So this is why we should really be very careful of the words that we speak or the thoughts that we have, the words that we speak to our dogs, the thoughts that we have about our dogs or to anybody else, because they are literally being cast as spells. So we can even then go into that rhythmic breathing. Right, my body is coherent right now. Okay, I do have this illness, but actually, I don't know, say if I had an illness, I would maybe reflect this in my name. So I'm like, okay, this illness is specific to me. And I would also almost imagine like there's a cord between me and my dog of where this illness can be spread. And all I'm going to do is like, I'm just cutting it. That cord, like I want an emotional cord. I want an attachment to my dog vibrationally. but this illness, this is my lesson, this is my teaching, this is my body telling me I have distress in my system energetically. I don't want my dog to absorb that as well. So there's a load of stuff you can do with energy, which, you know, it can be as imaginative as you want, so long as it's done with intention. Like, that is when we do things with intention, that is when we're in our intuitive mind, which is where we should all be operating and living from.
Awesome. Malena, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I love that, you know, everything that you said. And, you know, I do think that it's important that we make a intentional effort, not just as Dr. Fishburn was talking about, with our own thoughts and breath, etc., but also an intentional effort to say, okay, you know, I'm anxious or I'm ill or whatever, but make an intentional effort to create the space as being very safe for the animal. And that, yes, be proactive, not reactive. You know, like when it comes to separation anxiety, you know, dogs need a soft space to land. And I don't mean physically, you know, although a nice soft bed is never a bad thing either. You know, they need to know that that space is safe for them. And if at this point in time they don't know that because they have already developed some separation anxiety, then we need to, you know, hit that reset button and say, okay, what I'm going to show you, Fluffy, is that when I walk out the door for 1 second and I come back very quickly thereafter, nothing bad happens. And, you know, sometimes just doing some very gradual desensitization and keeping the dog in that understanding that the space is safe is really, really helpful. But yeah, I really appreciate everything that Dr. Fishburn said. Thank you.
I just something that's come to my head as well that I've talked about before, and I did a post on it and people really loved it, is again, because we are just all a vibration, that I'll say to people, look, when we're leaving the house, like one of the things that makes me laugh when people, like, and sometimes my mum will do it if they're dog sitting and like me and my husband are away, and I know my mum will say, oh, we'll not be long. And I'm like, Mum, you're going to be at least 3 hours. Say you're going to be at least 3 hours. Don't say, oh, we'll be back in a minute. I'm like, that's not true. That's a lie. But if I'm ever going away, what I'll always say to my dogs is like, I'm just a vibration away. Like, guys, I'm just a vibration. If you need me, like, just all I am is just a vibration away. So just holler and I'll feel it. I'll connect with you. You know, sometimes like when we just focus on that physical identity that we are, we actually don't give our dogs credit for the species that they are, that this a magnificent, amazing animal that they are, that, and they really understand so much. And this is why, like, I'm a really big fan of, you know, talking to our dogs, explaining to our dogs. And certainly, yeah, if we're going to be a second, then we're going to be a second. If we're going to be 3 hours, and it's like, you know what, guys, I'm going to be a while, I'm going to be 3 hours. So like they really understand that. They really, really do.
Yeah. Awesome. It's like Malena said, it's about slowly building that trust.
Yeah.
And Dr. Fishburn, like you said, and just being honest with them, with the things you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? I forgot to ask this earlier. I just received a note from one of my colleagues. You were talking about oils. Dr. Fishburn, can you name a few, please?
Yeah, so again, what makes me go twitchy-eyed is when it's like, oh, take this for that and this for that and this for that, because I'm like, these oil, I mean, we're working with like the spirit of the plant. So again, they have a vibration and the dog has a vibration. This is why I like to look at, it's almost like character match. It's almost like blind date. It's like, you know, it's like dating, like, yeah, you guys aren't aligned, but you guys are totally aligned. But in terms of just ones that can, yeah, just be really grounding. And again, this is from my perspective, because they're probably the ones that really just I'm attuned to as well. The ones that I mentioned was vetiver. And again, so if you don't know how to use, like, I'm quite so hopefully you can see in my talk that I'm not a serious person, but I am quite serious in terms of the protocols of how we work with essential oils. So I only use them from a principle of self-selection. If you don't know how to use them that way, I did a post on my Facebook like a few weeks ago when I was working with Tunka Sealers. So you can have, you know, just go onto my Facebook and you can find it in the videos. But yeah, the vetiver one is just very, like, what I do with some of the essential oils, because I haven't done with all of them, but I a journey to them to get information about like who they are and what's their spirit and what they are there to represent. So for me, the vetiver one is it's very grounding and very earthy and it's almost like very nurturing but protective. So it places like almost like this safety blanket over the animal. So that's why I mentioned vetiver. Nutmeg, and it's very good where we've got, it's almost like when we've got scatteredness, it's almost like we've got arrows shooting out everywhere. It can just really bring like, okay, we're just gonna, it's like almost like a boomerang, right? When bringing them back. So it's very good for coherence. The linden blossom is just a nice one for trust. You know, anything that's kind of from the roots. So sandalwood is a really beautiful one. Again, what I can get twitchy-eyed about is the conservation status of essential oils. So just be careful the sandalwood you choose. But you know, sandalwood is very, very grounding. It's earthy. It's from the roots. It's from the tree. Yeah. So there's different essentials for different things. But yeah, for ones that are just for nurturing, for grounding. A one that I find really nice, although it's quite expensive, is Pink Lotus. Pink Lotus is really just all-encompassing, just harmonics, really beautiful. And Tulsi can be as well, your Tulsi.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna get that Lotus into the chat for everyone. All right, so I've got one more question before we break and do the raw struck video. Jackie and a few other attendees wrote in about their dogs expressing aggression with GI illness. Yeah. Do either of you know how we could help?
Yeah, Malena, do you want me to go first? Do you want to go first?
You go first. Yeah, I used to work with all manner of aggression, but when it comes to sort of co-occurring issues that are particularly those that are physical, I usually bow out and leave that for others.
Thanks for that. The pressure. Yeah, so I did read that one, and you know, I sat with it. So again, sometimes it's very like, again, as humans, because it's like, well, I'm a nice person and I love my dog, and I, you know, why would my dog not want me to comfort them or to help them when they're not feeling well? But again, if we kind of take almost like, you know, we step away from our ego, for want of a better word, because that's kind of really, when we live in fear, we are just living from a place of the ego. So we kind of just take that away and just like, actually, let's just look at this from a blank sheet of paper. Just look at this from a place of of neutrality in that sense. We look at it like, when I'm not well, like, actually, let's look from a place of like, if I'm hungry or tired, do not be around me because I'm cranky as hell. But if I'm not feeling well, then I'm just a person that tends to be, do you know what, just leave me alone, I'm just going to sleep, leave me alone. If you come and speak to me, then that's fine. But, you know, some of the people, like my dad or even my sister or like other members of the family, some of us are nurturers, like, I'm not well, will you please just hold me and hug me? Whereas some, even humans, are like, you just need to leave me alone, like, don't even touch me, don't even speak, just leave me alone, and when I'm feeling better, I'll come out. So, you know, that is just kind of, again, your dog's an individual. There's no harm meant, there's no disrespect meant, there's certainly no like, oh, I don't love you when I'm not well. It's just simply, do you know what, right now my vibration is, I'm sore, I'm uncomfortable, just allow me to just be on my own and have that time. And it's really important that we honour that for our dogs. Like, again, in movies or in books, we are given this image of what our dogs are portrayed to be, like, you know, this lovely animal that's always loving, that's always caring, that will, you know, how can I please you, and, you know, you've told me to jump, how high should I jump? Whereas, you know, I live with my dogs, I coexist with my dogs because I want to learn what it's like to live with another species. So we have a very much a give and take relationship of like, if you want to be near me, you can be near me. If you need space, then you have space. But again, what you can do, depending on, so I think I understand that they can't, you know, when the dog's got like this GI pain, they can't physically touch the dog, and it depends on how close you can get. And if you can get, and actually it doesn't even depend on how close you can get. If you can get like to be near the dog, and I'm kind of looking away because Tunkasila's right next to me. If you can get near the dog, then again, there are some things that we can do in the dog's energy system. Yeah, we don't have to physically touch the dog. We can work from a great height. But actually, we can be in a different room because, again, DNA has a consciousness. Our vibration, our resonance is going. It's like a radio wave. It's just going out and out and out and out and out. Like that study that the US Army did. Even though these people were thousands of miles away, their DNA was responding to their emotional states. So we can be in a different room. We can look at a picture. We can sit and look at our dog. And even with the figure of eights that I told you about, you can literally go, right, I'm looking at my dog's abdomen, and all I'm doing is actually imagining, like, I'm just bringing some heat from my hands and just holding some heat in that area just to bring comfort. So there are some nurturing and soothing things that we can do just simply by holding, but without having to physically hold the dog. Or again, if the dog's there, we can just work in that energy space. In terms of GI issues, if there is kind of pain and discomfort, of course, I understand they're under veterinary care, but like as an add-on, that's where I would go to, like your herbal stuff, which I know there's going to be some talk on at some point today. For me, from that perspective, with your essential oils, where there's discomfort, like valerian root, stinks like ass. Like unless you like it, like if your vibrational states needs valerian, you're going to love the smell of valerian. If your body doesn't need it, it's going to smell like ass, I tell you. But that's antispasmodic. So one of the qualities, it's very calming, but it's antispasmodic. So where like there is GI cramps and there's kind of like this spasming going on, the valerian can be really good. As can, like, peppermint is a really quite common popular one. Ginger. I really like black pepper. I often give my dogs, not just for muscular aches, but for if there's a little bit of like gurgling or digestive issues going on, then the black pepper essential oil can be really nice as well. That's kind of what I had for that question. But yeah, don't give yourself a hard time. Like, some of us get cranky when we're not well, and some of us are like, no, please nurture me. It's the same thing with our dogs as well.
Awesome. I think that about wraps up our session. Malena and Isla, thank you so much for all your insight, wisdom, teaching us everything you know, and for both of you for being so generous during this panel. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
it's so great being here.
Yeah, no, awesome. Again, just to reciprocate that, really, it's beautiful to meet Malena and hear all the beautiful knowledge that you have. So thank you for sharing that.
And vice versa.
Yeah, just so beautiful to have what an amazing event, and to have all these people on, and like that's what it's about. It's bettering ourselves, bettering our pets, bettering plants and animals and the universe and everything. So and I just want to add, like, if you can, please, I would be so excited to see you in the ceremony. Yeah, I'm really excited for that. So I'll be back later on. Like, it's going to be great because it's going to be 9:30 UK time, like tonight. So it's not going to be properly dark, but it's going to be a little bit dark. So there's going to be some fun stuff. Yeah.
It's a golden hour.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next session.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.